Got it. Good afternoon, Andrew. So it's afternoon in UK.
It is. Good morning, Tony. How are you?
Yeah, thank you. So it's almost afternoon for me here in Orlando, Florida. So I have you in these sessions, one-on-one with PMO leaders. So this session is to bring people like you here and share knowledge, experience to help the new generation of leaders that are watching this video. So I'm gonna talk a little bit about you. So I transition to you so you continue. Andrew Ball, he has more than 20 years of experience in the PMO space and project management. He's been working with different organizations as a leader, helping those organizations to achieve business values and outcomes. Andrew is more a people person. So he's a great leader, so he connect well with people. So I was ask Andrew to add a little bit about himself so you get familiar with Andrew more.
Okay. Yes, thank you, Tony. I'll keep it relatively short. So I after a career in the army within the finance and personnel area, it was the Pay Corps and the Adjutant General's Corps. I came out in 1995 and not really knowing what I was going to do. And I got into IT. Through a Y2K preparatory program, I learned all about COBOL, but I soon realised that technically capable, it's the people side of life that interests me more. And I did a couple of assignments, one of which was all about scheduling and planning for a rollout across across the national grid of a new system. And where I was local leader for a small team of engineers, all of a sudden the PMO sort of opened at the time. It was the support of the people who are doing the technical piece, and that really appealed to me. And so that was the start of the journey to where I am today. As Tony said, I've gone through a number of industries, a number of sectors. As far as I'm concerned, a PMO is a PMO is a PMO. Very similar to a project. We all work to the same premise, which is, I'd like to hope, that successful delivery of the outcome of the project or the program. And I see my PMO historically as a part of that. We are not that secretariat, that group of people in the corner who do stuff. We are there to help the project managers succeed in their delivery and the program, and ultimately the businesses to meet their strategic goals and ambitions. And that fundamentally is me, and that's what I've been working to over the last 20 plus years.
Yeah, excellent. You mentioned something very important that the PMOs, they should be like a secretary, just taking orders. So in your experience, so one of the things that talking to a lot of project management and PMO leaders around the world is the lack of awareness for business leaders about the PMO. So in your experience, how can you demonstrate value for the business leaders so they see PMO as an organization to have in the realms, in the domain?
It's interesting. I mean, in the UK, and my experience is limited primarily to the UK, the PMO came about probably towards the end of the 90s. And it was almost as if businesses were having failing projects and programs. And someone went to the executive handbook, and in there on chapter on project management, it said a PMO will solve your problems. And so the executive went out and bought a PMO. They didn't know what the PMO was. They didn't know what it did, but the handbook said it was the panacea. And from that point, you end up with a completely misplaced perception of what the PMO is and does. You know, it doesn't actually help problems. What it does is it smooths the path to successful delivery. And so from the future perspective, it's about understanding what it is the business problem is the PMO has been established to resolve. And it could well be project, it could be consistency, it could be rigor, it could be just the maintenance of good project function and discipline, and ensure that consistency is across the entire landscape. And that really is where I see my PMO.
Okay. Yeah. So you mentioned that PMO came around in the early 1990s in UK. But there are some numbers out there, so people that have done some research, including PMI, PricewaterhouseCoopers, also in association. So they said that most of the PMO die in 3 years.
Yeah.
So why do you think that happened?
Well, because there is a massive disjoint between, because the executives were buying a PMO which they didn't understand what it was. The
Mhm.
project delivery landscape didn't understand what the PMO was, and the PMO didn't know what it was. It was one thing I always maintain in the majority of my conversations was that I certainly I didn't, but I don't know anyone who went through school thinking that when they grow up they want to be a PMO. So
Yeah.
I would quite comfortably say that 99.9% of people in a PMO are there by accident, and it
Mhm.
was something that appeals to them. Back in every projects around project management wasn't necessarily mature, and so a PMO had no hope. It was just there as seen as a sticking plaster for failed, but no one understood what and how. And it's actually matured at pace. And I would say we're an evolution of a PMO, and we're actually getting close. No, it'll never be perfect. There's always room for improvement, but
Exactly.
the PMO is beginning to understand what it brings to the organization.
Right. Yeah, that's very interesting. You mentioned something that is also happening in the world of PMO. You remember when PMI didn't have I would say, the influence in the project management landscape like they have now. But a lot of people started calling the accidental project manager, and now I see
Mhm.
that a lot of people, as you mentioned, are in charge of the PMO, but they don't know how to do it. They don't know how to run. So I'm calling that the accidental PMO professionals,
Yeah,
because
yeah.
we have frameworks, we have education, we have certification. So what do you think about that? So it's like we are repeating the histories, telling that it's not the accidental project manager, because now we have a lot of stuff. We have PhD in project management. So what do you think about that? So all PMO leaders, they should have education to understand how a PMO should be established and operate.
It is funny. I mean, I earlier on, that every organization is different. Project is different. So how can you have similar PMOs? Each have their own challenges, their own purpose, their own problem statements to actually resolve. If you can take a PMO for the project delivery, but wrap around, and it's all about the personality, it's all about the stakeholders. What are the functions of a PMO? What are the functions of a project manager? They all have their own, and it's how these work in synergy to actually achieve the successful delivery of the outcome.
Mhm.
And so it's fascinating from that perspective. I worry when I hear about PhDs in project management. How far can you go down in the depths of project management to actually create a curriculum that is actually of any value? And in UK we have Prince 2. There's the APM. We have a number of associations that certify project managers, and very six functions. It's all that sort of thing. How do you bring that up to PhD level? How do you bring that up to that what doing that is different?
Mm-hmm.
Is and I will always maintain it's the simplification of the complex.
Right. Yeah, you mentioned something that kept my attention when you sent me your vibe. And you mentioned a couple of things that drive you as a professional. So you mentioned about unraveling complexity and leveling the plane or the pain.
Yeah, yeah. The pain. I mean, if you look at and it goes back to that ethos I say, you know, that my PMO is part of the project organization.
Mhm.
You know, all organizations will have, you know, from the PMO perspective, it's whether the project managers live within the PMO or the PMO is the support mechanism. It doesn't really matter, but it's all the PMO. So we've got one simple organization within the business, and that organization is there to help the business realize its strategic goals and ambitions. Nothing else. The business owns them. The PMO don't. We own the delivery. So it's within that there are, because it's projects, because they're unique, it's the first time we've ever done them, otherwise it's no longer a project. There is a level of complexity in that, so it's helping project managers to actually break that complexity down into those their level. It's exposing exactly what it is you're trying to achieve, and by getting it to that level, you have a far higher certainty of actually achieving it, rather than I worked on a program about a year and a half ago, and I got bored saying everyone was trying to eat the elephant. You know,
Right.
it's that age-old joke. How do you eat an elephant? You know, because you have this big, horrible, complex
Right.
black beast, and the answer is you eat it one mouthful at a time. So you're breaking it down, and so that's where I come from. It is, let's get it down to manageable chunks, because that has got to be the purpose of project management. I go
Exactly.
back when I get really, really boring, I talk about the Egyptians. You know, can you imagine waking up one day, you're a pharaoh, and you turn around and say, I want a pyramid, and you
Mhm.
get your lieutenant, your lieutenant, you say, I want a pyramid. Go and build me a pyramid.
Right.
And you go, sorry, we're in the deserts. Somehow they managed to do it, and it would have been fairly, you know, so you've got an enormous great thing that somehow someone has broken it down into those individual activities, and they've produced something absolutely
Huge.
remarkable that's lasted 5,000 years. How old? I don't know how old they are. You know, so it's that sort of concept. That's what I
Yeah.
mean by leveling the pain. It is, let's bring it down to that level where it isn't.
Yeah. It's when you think about the Great Wall in China,
Yeah.
that was a huge endeavor. So how you envision that people are gonna do that kind of thing? So
Yeah. And
it,
you look at it, you know, and it's built on side of a mountain, like, and you
yeah,
go, why, how, what, you know, you can imagine that they turn around and say, we can't do this. And
exactly.
whoever it is walks around the corner and says, that's not the option. There is no option. It has to be built. Get on and build it. You know, so
Yes.
it really is in this day and age, in comparison, you know, whether it's NASA building one of the early Apollos, you know,
Mm.
it is, where do we start? You start at the very high level, and you break it down, and you break it down, and you break it down, and you break it down to the individual nuts and bolts if necessary. But you break it down so you can actually understand and you can see the tangible outputs and the activities.
Right. Yeah, that's interesting. So we are living in a new world. An organization like PMI. So they, I would say, simplify the whole thing in a that they call it the talent triangle.
Yep.
So the talent triangle. So we have three good things. So we have the power skills, we have business acumen, and then we have the way of working.
Yeah.
So in that realm, how do you envision the PMO performing?
What
WOW changing the way of working, business acumen, and also power skills.
Well, I think it covers all three, doesn't it? Really, and it's back to the organisational thing. I mean, over the last 5 odd years, I've been working within the portfolio world. It's something that really it's taking the business goals and ambitions, the vision of the chief executive, the person at the top. What do I want to do over the next 5 years, and what does that mean? And then you break it down, you break it down, you break it down. You end up with a list of activities with a simple goal that if you achieve all these activities by rights, it will roll up and it will be the level 0 vision will be achieved. And it's taking businesses through that journey. How do you get from a single, we want to be global number one in whatever it is, pot plants. Okay, so that's what do we need to do, and who's going to do it, and how do we schedule it, and everything else. So from a portfolio perspective, developing that roadmap to achieve that. So I think that's the business acumen. So that's working with the business, but also it's the power skills. So it's working with the executives and drawing the ideas out of them over what does the activity look like that achieves your area of responsibility in this vision. And then the ways of working it is how do you translate those two pieces into a delivery framework and timeline, achieve that level 0 ambition.
Yeah, exactly. I agree with you. So let's move a little. So I think that we have some kind of internet delay here. So let's move to that's the topic that I'm investing a lot of time in, the next generation PMO. So it's
Yeah.
like everything is about the future, how we're gonna be performing in 5 years, 10 years. So I have two topics that I would like to attach. One is in order of technologies. So let's talk about a little bit how AI, artificial intelligence, now that's the buzzword of the day. Artificial intelligence, and let's talk about in the other side of the soft skills, the EQ,
Yep.
artificial emotional intelligence. So we have two, emotional intelligence and artificial intelligence. So let's start. How do you envision the next generation PMO taking into account those popular concepts that are emerging there?
Well, I think my background, my where I sit, so everything I look at is around the emotional intelligence, the EI side of it. It's about the people side of it, because at the end of the day, it's people. AI, I could talk for hours on it. I mean, yeah. I think it goes back to the early days of my time in PMO. And one of the biggest struggles is getting a project manager to do his weekly report.
Mm.
Because they come up with so many different reasons why don't, and it takes the PMO back to that secretariat world, which is about gathering the knowledge about what's happened on the project, so that the people, the decision makers, have the comfort that it's actually on track and is going to achieve. If not, at what point are the risks and the financial implications going to hit them, and they're going to have to intervene. And even in those days, and we're talking about almost the turn of the century, this side, around about 2002, 2003, project managers returned and was like, I'm too busy to do my report. And at that point, people were trying to find a way of automating project manager reporting.
Mm.
And the bottom line is it becomes incredibly flat. It's about, it's almost going to be rag status. We've got this. How are you doing? It hasn't got the real people part of project delivery within that. And I don't think AI will ever replace that. AI will be very good at interrogating all the data that it's fed, and then presenting that in a way that it provides a picture, a status, but it won't necessarily be able to put the human nuance actually into that. And I think that's a real danger. And I think there's always going to be that need for personality, unless we end up in generation 3 AI, where it actually and it's one of those that, because it is a commentary, because it's words that someone has taken out of their heads, a computer will never ever be able to do that. It's incredibly black and white binary. And so AI has a use, but it's about interrogating vast quantities of data, which is brilliant.
Right.
Absolutely fine. It saves, but it doesn't actually it becomes that objectivity, which is the danger. You're almost in a lot of project management, it's about subjectivity. If you turn around and say, okay, achievement of activities and tasks in a plan at whatever level you're talking about, have you achieved it? Yes or no? I haven't. Right. What is AI going to do with that? Is it automatically going to move everything to the right because we have got a task? Will it have the ability to turn around and say, okay, can we do it in 3 days rather than 5 days? Can we do this? Can we do that? Can we bring in more resources? Can we bring in all those other tools that we have at our disposal to actually keep the plan on track? And that is useful. And I suppose AI will be great for flagging that up. From the EI side of it, from the people side of it, it is the complete opposite of that. It's bringing the personality into the project. Are we going to be able to save money by using it? There's always that ambition, isn't it? But you almost go back to the very beginning of PMO, where executive took out his executive 101 handbook and it said, get a PMO and it'll solve all your project
Exactly.
problems. And it doesn't. And it won't, because it's about people, it's about delivery, it's about success.
Right. No, exactly. So I have seen a lot of trends like that. So I remember, so I'm some kind of the people say dinosaur. We used to work with mainframe.
Yeah,
So I started working Fortran and COBOL language. That's the languages that I use. So a lot of people started when you remember about the fourth generation language and the fifth
yeah,
generation language.
yeah,
So when the fourth generation languages came around, so everybody was saying, oh, you're gonna lose your job because now the end users, they will be capable or developing their own application, so they won't need you. So you
mm,
need to look for something else to do. And still, in 2023, we are using COBOL. A lot of banks, huge
yeah,
organizations, they are still using COBOL language to
yeah,
develop the application. And, and still, we need software developers to do the
yeah,
work. No, the end user, because if I am in finance, that's not my domain. So I don't want to be a software developer. So, so it's the same thing. So a lot
yeah,
of people are afraid, I would say. So a lot of project managers that I talk to them, so they are concerned because organizations like Gartner Group, they are saying by the 2030, that's 7 years away, all the tasks of project manager will be replaced by some kind of artificial intelligence software. So they say 80% of the tasks that project managers are currently doing will be replaced. So a lot of people are, oh my gosh, I'm gonna lose my job. What am I gonna do? But that's So it like anything else, like the same story that I'm telling you about the fourth generation language.
yeah,
Then after the fourth generation language, the fifth generation came around. We used to call the case tools, the computer software engineering aid. Um, so so I
but
would say it's a
I
tool.
mean,
So we need to embrace it and use it uh,
yeah.
intelligently.
I mean, but it's fascinating. What you were saying about 7 years' time, that um, you do end up with this problem. One of the greatest skills in project management is the ability to sit down with the customer,
Mm.
the stakeholder, and interrogate them into what they're actually after. Because it is this we want to be global, we want to be this global organization in pot plants. Well, what does that mean? What does that really mean? You know, will AI ever be able to take a conversation of thoughts and innuendo and actually translate it into something tangible? Or then where do we go? And it's that imagination that I would say that technology will never generate, which is that the ability to translate someone's thoughts into something with them that is a reality, that is achievable. And then
Exactly.
how do you deal with it? You know, okay, so if you get that part and you feed that into the punch card, you know, the good old days as you were talking about, you know, it's a one of those, it's one of those, this is one of those, or whether it's working storage in COBOL, and you can start from there. And the problem, absolutely,
Mhm.
but it's that human ability using imagination based on personal skill, personal experience, absolutely binary or whatever guy's going to, I'm sure they come up with a 4-dimensional phrase I works thinks. But it's about the important thing with the doing and throwing, because there's always going to be changes, because it is such a chaotic or complex world, I think.
Yeah, I agree with you. So, I want to ask you for three things that you consider PMO leaders and project management leaders should do to be better professionals and also to help the organizations to achieve their strategic initiatives. What would you say they should do?
Well, I think it's very much that. It's about, we're not special. We just do a job. You know, it was fascinating conversation I had about, you know, so I live in this project organization, and I liken it to, we have an HR function in a business, we have a finance function in the business, we have an operations, we have procurement, we have everything. We've got a project function within the business, and that's the PMO.
Mhm.
That's what projects are all about. We are there to take ideas that come out of the operation, the business, the supporting functions, and turn them into reality based on the needs of the business. So that's the important thing, is understand your place within the organization, and it needs that. It's I suppose what I'd like to think about the IT function. I have real challenges with the modern IT function, because they think they are more than what they are, which is they are a support function for the business. They help
Exactly.
the project work. If you look at the majority of IT functions, they think they run the business, you know,
Mhm.
like HR, finance, you know, and you end up with a very, very, very dangerous situation, because you're being led by technology, you're being led by capability rather than purpose. So the
Mhm.
PMO is there to actually temper that enthusiasm. It's about turning the business purpose into reality and delivering it through. So that's the first thing. How do you have someone brave enough to do that? Well, it's quite easy. It's about having that purpose of what is the PMO. Um, I think the second one is exactly what you're talking about, which is the next generation. It's always about keeping the flow through. You know, as I said, no one goes through school thinking that when I grow up, I want to be a PMO, because they don't even know what it is. They don't even know it exists. So you fall into it. So it's about taking the people who want to. In the UK, and I'm sure it's replicated somewhere across the world, it's the PMO was seen as failed project managers.
Mhm.
It wasn't seen as a professional function. And so it's about lifting, maintaining that, and that's why I maintain it within the project organization. The
Right.
project managers have skill sets in that world. They're absolutely brilliant, focused on delivery. PMO has got skill sets in that world, and it's about ensuring that the business get what they need through the project managers. And so identifying and maintaining the integrity of that purpose of the PMO through the next generation. So I think that's probably all three of them, really. You know, the how we do it is always going to evolve.
Exactly.
But it's fundamentally the same. I mean, I live by 6 guiding principles in my project delivery, whether within the project organization. It's about requirements, it's about planning, it's about reporting, it's about change, risk, and stakeholders. Those are the 6 principles. Get them right. And I don't see anything beyond that in the project world. Yes, okay, you can break it down into finances and budgets and investments and benefits, but no, it's encapsulated in those 6 things. Get those 6 things absolutely spot on, and you will not fail.
Exactly. Yeah, I perfectly agree with you. So sometimes we looking for more complexity when we should keep it simple.
Absolutely, bring it down, bring it down,
Exactly.
yeah, bring it back. You know, it was. I always think of. It was actually working for an American company, and the divisional director wanted a screen. And we're going back a few years. Wanted a screen in the corner of his office, which was a dashboard,
Right.
so he could see what was happening across the operation, and he was on top of it. And the first question was, when that goes red, what are you going to do?
Mm-hmm.
And the answer is solve it. And that is the problem. It's not his job to solve the problems.
Exactly.
If he trusts his staff so little that they won't come to him when it's resolved, but why do you want to see it happening full real time? And that's really is that real danger. You know, in the project world, there is this dream or aspiration to have real time reporting. What are you going to do with the information?
Mm-hmm.
You've
Exactly.
made it, you've made it incredibly complex to actually achieve it. But what are you going to do with it? And the answer is nothing. And it's almost gimmick. Everything's a gimmick, and it's just bring it back to basics. You know, reporting, as far as I'm concerned, it's you've got a plan. You've got a plan that's agreed and signed off. So on a weekly report is, you were supposed to do this. Did you achieve it? Yes or no? If you didn't achieve it, why didn't you achieve it? When are you going to achieve it? What's the
Exactly.
impact of that? You know, what's the issue? What are you doing next week? And what's the risk around it? And if you compete to maintain a report at that level, it gives
Mm-hmm.
everyone the information they need to know.
Exactly. No, that's what we need to do and keep things simple,
Yeah,
understanding what the requirements. So we need to have good collaboration, good communication,
yeah,
and connecting with people,
yeah,
regardless the role they have in the organization. That's one of those things that any project manager, leader, or PMO leader should do.
yeah.
So I think that we cover a lot of things here, that we help a lot of people out there
Good.
with the strategies and how they can be better leaders in the organization. So going forward, if some people want to reach out to you, I saw that you're looking for new opportunities
Yeah,
in
yeah.
the consulting area. So do you have a company that people can go and check what you offering today? Or?
No. I'm a sole trader. I work on my own, freelancer.
Oh, as a freelancer.
Yeah,
So if someone want to reach out to you, so they connect with you in
through
LinkedIn.
LinkedIn. Yeah, that'd be good.
Okay. Yeah, so we have an expert in the industry. Andrew has a lot of years of experience, real life experience, and challenges that made him like an expert in this space of PMO and project management. So if you want to reach out to Andrew, so go to LinkedIn and connect with him. So keep the conversation going. So I appreciate your time, Andrew, for
It's
sharing
been a
your
pleasure.
knowledge and your wisdom about these hot topics. We're talking about PMOs, artificial intelligence, chat GPT that's killing a lot of people. That's a lot of thing out there that people
It
are
is.
nervous about the future.
Yeah,
So we need to embrace the future and use it for our advantage to be better humans. That's what we need to do. So help the world to be better and,
Yes.
and make all the contribution that we can. But thank you very much, Andrew, for your time. So hopefully I see you again.
It's been a pleasure. It's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you very much indeed, Tony.
Yeah, thank you.